Okay, so we're talking about a couple of different things today regarding Kennedy. Mainly the biggest thing that we're going to talk about today is Kennedy's assassination. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know it, Kennedy gets assassinated. So we're gonna, yeah, I know, right? If you didn't, it kind of scared me, honestly. He caught me off guard with that one, but yeah, Kennedy's going to be donezo at some point today. All right, that is kind of the nature of the way that U.S. history plays out. We will look at the Zapruder film. It is graphic, though it is from like the 1960s. So if you don't want to look at it, avert your gaze. Don't look at it. That's fine. I won't yell at you for not wanting to look at the literal assassination of a human being. That's okay if you don't want to look at that. But it is like a historical film, and it's probably not any worse than anything that you've ever seen on any TV show that you've ever watched. But at the same time, it is real. So we will see that. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at the way it kind of plays out. We'll look at Kennedy's domestic program, the race to space, though we've already talked about the race to space, so we probably won't spend that much time on it. I'll probably really quickly gloss over it if we're being honest. Kennedy's assassination, a great society after Lyndon Johnson takes over, and then healthcare insurance as well. This is side note. I'm pretty sure this is a young Bill Clinton talking to Kennedy, which is like isn't that just weird? Like how that plays out, how history plays out. Clinton talking to Kennedy, and then later on going on to become a president. It's just weird. Anyways, okay. So some of the stuff that we're seeing here, the new frontier, right? And this is a picture that kind of shows Kennedy's resolve, his ability to go through, injury. Kennedy's coming out on the crutches like he's Kevin Durant here. He's got the new frontier to deal with. He's got the space race to deal with. He's got the civil rights movement to address. He's got healthcare, education. I think I said before the space race, but also like the Cold War, right? All this stuff is going on. And then we have like the Cuban Missile Crisis that we talked about last time. Long story short, this guy has his hands full, right? He's got a lot of stuff going on. And with his domestic program, he's looking to do things like increase the minimum wage. He's looking to do things like have the Equal Pay Act of 1963. Now, the Equal Pay Act of 1963 prohibits sex-based wage discrimination between men and women in the same establishment who perform jobs that require substantially equal skill, effort, and time. However, it's much like the whole issue of desegregation, where it's like, yeah, legally, segregation is bad, right? Like it's not legal, but when we have these laws put into place, even with the Equal Pay Act, there's still discrimination in the workplace that carries on. It's like some form of de facto wage discrimination, right? So it doesn't just automatically fix all the problems with discrimination in the workplace when these things are put in, but not to be completely pessimistic, because this is still, again, as I've said before, a step in the proper direction of having like a actual law in place to hopefully curb some of these issues. Also prohibits discrimination by employers on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex as well. So getting back to some of the things with the civil rights movement as well, and kind of tying in there. All right. Am I going too fast if I move on? No? Okay. Just some differences in the Kennedy initiative. He wants to, obviously, he's different than Eisenhower in his military spending. He's different in Eisenhower with his flexible, response policy. Eisenhower, way more into like nuclear weapons and massive retaliation. Kennedy's like, that's definitely a thing that we'll do, but it's not the whole thing. Economics-wise, that Equal Pay Act, increased minimum wage, we talked about. There's a national welfare system that's being improved, so maybe some forms of some socialized centers for our economics in the United States, embracing economic policy of deficit spending. We're also seeing introducing, the civil rights kind of legislation. Obviously, Lyndon Johnson carries forward with that more, considering Kennedy's assassination. I would imagine that if Kennedy did carry on, he would have eventually probably pushed some of those things through. But I can't predict what the future would have, or what the past would have been like should things have been different. Kennedy also pushing for legislation to provide money for school desegregation, protecting voting rights, all these different things, right? We have the space exploration, committing to get somebody on the moon by 1970, which we know we do it, right? And then foreign aid, creating the Peace Corps in 1961, aiding those developing nations, aiding the third world, as we talked about last class, with, because we're also looking at the Soviets and they're doing it, and we're like, well, I guess we should probably do it too, right? That is part of it. To go very quickly through this, we don't even really need to talk too much about like the Freedom 7 or, we'll talk a little bit. I mean, Alan Shepard's, he's on a space flight aboard Project Mercury, the space capsule right here. Other than that, just big things, 1961, Yuri Gagarin, the Soviets, they're kind of kicking our butt in the space race. They're doing really well. Even though we had established NASA, we're kind of on it. After Sputnik goes into space, we're like, oh crap, like we got to get on it too. And so that's when the space race kind of kicks off. Now they do beat us to several different kind of landmarks, but obviously we're the first with the man on the moon, and that's that's like taking home the whole cake. The space race is the competition between the Soviet Union and the United States to develop space exploration. And then this is also obviously just kind of a big advancement in our technology, and it's something that everybody's kind of got their eyes on, right? Once again, committed to landing a man on the moon by 1970, and we do it with Neil Armstrong. Now, let's talk about what you're all here for, right? The JFK assassination, okay? JFK, he's a president for 2.5 years. He's relatively well liked by a lot of people. In fact, when JFK is assassinated, it is like a national mourning, right? It's a really sad moment for a lot of young people, especially in the United States, kind of like the young person's president, especially with his youthful exuberance and all this other stuff going on. Either way, November 1963, Kennedy is traveling to Texas. He's campaigning for his 1964 re-election. He is with his wife. He is with the governor of Texas. Texas is a swing state. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, what's the implication in like a big election? Yeah, pretty much, right? And the same thing that kind of what we saw with Georgia kind of becoming a swing state most recently. There's like a whole movie, I think, too, called Swing State, isn't there? Anybody ever heard of that? I think it's like Billy Ray Cyrus or something is in it. I know, it's weird. Is it? Does anybody recognize that at all? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's like a whole movie about how this guy has like the last vote or something in the state of like Florida, and he's like stereotypical Florida man or something. Either way, Texas is a swing state, okay? Texas is a swing state. That means that Kennedy needs to focus his political campaigning there. He needs to make sure that he's showing out for the people of Texas. So he's like, all right, well, let's do like a motorcade or something. And his security advisors are like, John, maybe you shouldn't take the convertible today. And he's like, no, the people need to see me, right? The people should see me. They need to see their president. Lo and behold, while JFK is, somebody saw the president. While JFK is driving, well, obviously he's in the back seat, but while the motorcade is going along, he is assassinated. He is shot. There are 3 shots, though there's like 1 bullet that doesn't seem to be like found. There's the 2 bullets. Obviously, one hits Kennedy, I believe, somewhere here near the chest. There's a second shot while everybody's looking around in the confusion, and then Kennedy is shot in the head. And that is the moment that he probably does pass away, though. At the same time, the way that things go, they pronounce him dead later on at a hospital. Either way, Kennedy is assassinated while driving in a convertible on a presidential parade through downtown Dallas. JFK was in Dallas trying to get support for next year's election, right? So he's planning on running for re-election. He probably would have won too, honestly. I don't, especially given the way that the election with Lyndon Johnson goes, I can't imagine an outcome where JFK doesn't win unless there's a stronger, conservative opponent. But Dallas was one of many campaign stops throughout the next year of the presidency. So he's just there. He's there, he's campaigning, he's going around, he's seeing the people. And so next, we'll kind of go through some of these different images. Getting there that day, you obviously would never suspect that later on in the day that, if you're Jackie Kennedy or if you're John Kennedy, that this is something that's going to happen. They're out greeting people, saying hello. I mean, you very, very easily, just as well, could have been shot in a crowd like this. Security is probably a bit higher and there's not as much vantage points, but still, there's looseness in this, right? There's looseness in going around, seeing people, hello, hey, shaking hands, all this other stuff. So you see that on the campaign trail. Additionally, the big thing here is that the route is publicized. Why? Because it's like, come out and see your president, show some support. It's basically like a parade almost, right? Kennedy's there in the motorcade waving at people, hello, hi, how are you doing? And everybody's there on the side of the road cheering on, watching, taking their 1960s equivalent of Snapchats of Kennedy, right? And that's where we'll get the Zapruder film. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, so the route is publicized, which is obviously a big deal, considering this is allowing people, well, in particular, person, to plan some sort of assassination. This is the area where it takes place, taking along this route here. And you have a different diagram, too. This is Daley Plaza. This is where the shots come from, right? So this is where Oswald is. If you didn't know, it was Lee Harvey Oswald. We'll touch on him a little bit more in a second. But this is the building here where he's located at this kind of vantage point, this sniper point. This is Kennedy's motorcade, right, coming through. Came through this area. You got people all along the side of the road, and he's waving like the Queen of England, right, this. And then as he's driving through, the shots are coming from here. Okay, the shots come from this building up at a high vantage point. And then additionally, this is where we'll have that filming, right? The Zapruder film, it's a guy and he's kind of standing like on top of something, and well, that's why I said it's like he's taking a Snapchat basically. It's the same stuff I would have done if like I had a camera and a president was coming by, right? Anybody would. Even today, like, I don't know, if Biden just like rolled by, I'd probably take a quick Snapchat and then move about my day. I don't know, right? This guy's doing the same thing. He's seeing Kennedy, and maybe he's a big fan, or maybe he's not a big fan, maybe he just likes history, maybe he's like, wow, a sitting president, whatever, right? But he's taking a video either way. All right, so he's taking a video. Abraham Zapruder, he's here, and he captures what is probably going to be one of the most, historically significant and very well-studied pieces of footage in U.S. history. This is the film camera that he took it on, so obviously it's not going to look like a 4K movie when you look through it. I think the video that we'll watch is kind of in like slow motion, but you will see, again, we're going to watch this video, so don't watch it if you don't want to. I'm not going to force you to I'm not going to do like the Bird Box thing, right, where you hold people's eyes open. You guys see that movie? Nobody watched Bird Box?
I've heard of it.
You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to do this to you guys. So if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But you will see in the Zapruder film why it is such an important film is because you're going to see a couple of things. One, you'll see the governor in front of Kennedy react to maybe getting shot with something, which later on find out that he did. You'll see Kennedy react as well. And then you'll see Jackie Kennedy kind of check on John, and she's like, you okay? Like, what's going on? You don't know what it is at first. Maybe you heard the shot or whatever. There's probably some shot going on there too. And then, bang, shot right in the head. And it is, it's a silent film, but it's almost like you can feel and hear what the sound would be like. You can see the impact. It's really kind of a brutal thing. But we'll take a look at that. So let's go ahead and watch it. Again, if you don't want to, don't watch it. But, it's a piece of history if you want to. It's not going to, I don't think it will scar you. I don't think it will scar you too much. So here, take a look. So he's waving, motorcade, going through, driving, hello, right around here. There's a shot. You can see him react. The governor react as well. Kennedy checking himself. I've been hit. And then a second shot. And there it is. Kennedy shot in the head. And this is the point where Jackie Kennedy starts panicking, rightfully so. I mean, I probably would as well. She experienced some serious PTSD from this, as you might imagine. It's a really kind of horrific situation. So we'll watch one more time. Take a look at Governor Connolly, right? So see if you can see the moment. So Zapruder's standing over here filming, right? And he's watching this, and he's probably just thinking he's getting a nice video of the president. And lo and behold. So right about here, you can see Connolly react, right? And when he reacts, same time, Kennedy's also reacting. The bullet maybe, I think, went through and then hit Kennedy as well. And so Kennedy's not down here by any means. If they had reacted quicker even and had pulled him down, he would have been fine. But because there's such a slow reaction to now, this is also in slow motion, right? But because there's such like a slow reaction time here, and there's time that's spent checking on Kennedy, the next shot is the fatal one. And then Jackie tries to escape, obviously. She's not targeted. She's not shot. Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't even think of Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't think he meant to shoot Governor Connolly, but he did, right? It's probably hard to shoot at a moving vehicle anyway. So this is a Zapruder film, and that is something that is used by, like, you know, the Warren Commission, which is a commission set up to basically investigate the assassination of Kennedy. And they go through and they analyze this video, like, frame by frame by frame by frame, just over and over and over again.
They know exactly what frame.
Absolutely. And the big thing here is that just by looking at the film, like the footage, you can see an angle of, like, that would tell you, you know, if Kennedy's shot here, if the first shot is here. Looking at that footage, it might not be the answer to everything, but it gives you a good idea of what happened, obviously. It's an assassination caught on film. Next, we have Walter Cronkite. So he's basically like, you know, if your parents ever talk about, you know, we used to turn on the TV and there was the news and we watched the news. That was Walter Cronkite, because he was the guy that everybody was like, oh, CBS News, like, let's tune in. So in the same way that your parents or whoever probably tuned into the news when 9/11 happened, or the way that I tuned into the news, I guess, when Osama bin Laden was killed, you know, the way that that's happening where everybody's transfixed on it, this is the first time that a president has been assassinated when there is television. So this is obviously a huge media event. So see what Walter Cronkite. So that is, however short it might be, that alone in itself is like a, oh crap, well, this is historical moment, right? And Cronkite is at the kind of helm of that for the media side. This is an image of the vantage point. I believe there was so I don't know, I dove into the background of Oswald a little bit, but I don't know a ton about Oswald. I do know that he was distraught, obviously, over a couple of different things. But the big thing that I'm seeing here is that Oswald actually takes this job at this book place, right? Presumably to gain access to some sort of vantage point, knowing that the route is published, and uses this as a way to get to a vantage point for a sniper's nest, and he goes through and shoots Kennedy in this area. This is some more images of, obviously, Kennedy's motorcade. It's pretty, you know, messy as it might be, considering he was assassinated and shot in the head, right? So no surprise there. We also have some more just kind of images of the media. President shot dead. You can see that this is like a huge historical moment. Now, it's not the first time that a president has been murdered in the United States. But whenever any president is murdered throughout the entire world, or any world leader, obviously it's a big deal. And then on top of that, the fact that this is, like I said, the first kind of televised event that this has happened, it's widely talked about, widely mentioned, and it's going to be on the news for weeks, right, for a long, long time. Even more so, we now have the shooter, right, Lee Harvey Oswald, arrested for the murder of Kennedy and a Dallas police officer. He claims that he didn't do it. He was like, I didn't do it. In fact, he says, I'm just a patsy, which is basically saying, like, I'm just like a scapegoat. I'm not the guy. You got the wrong one. During his interrogation, Oswald denied any guilt. He said, I didn't shoot anybody, sir. I'm just a patsy, right? And to add even more drama to the whole situation, Oswald is later on, and this is another televised event, which is just got to be like a crazy year, honestly. Imagine living in this year. Oswald is shot by Dallas nightclub owner and police informant Jack Ruby. Now, I looked into this, and one of the things that I saw with Jack Ruby is, like, one of the reasons why he wanted to kill Oswald is they say that he himself, I believe, gave the quote that I wanted to show that Jews had guts, right? And then on top of that, he was just very distraught, I guess, about the death of Kennedy, and he wanted to do something. He said that he wanted to be a hero, right? At this point, given the approval of Kennedy and the kind of mourning of his loss, Oswald is probably one of the most hated people he probably is the most hated person in the United States, right? November 24th, Oswald was shot by Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby. On Sunday morning, in front of the press, Oswald was being led to be transferred to county jail from Dallas Police Headquarters. The Dallas Police were extremely worried for safety of for the safety of their prisoner. Who was there? Yeah, I know, right? I wonder why as well. Told the CBS News, we knew that Oswald was the most hated suspect of the 20th century. We shot him with a small caliber pistol, and Oswald died at a Parkland hospital where Kennedy had died 2 days earlier. So I guess somewhat of a poetic callback there. Ruby was indicted on November 26, convicted of murdering Oswald and sentenced to death by electric chair. The ruling was overturned on appeal, but Ruby died of pulmonary embolism, from a pulmonary embolism stemming from lung cancer in 1967 before a new trial could take place. So maybe that also has something to play with it as well. I don't know if Ruby understood exactly the length of his illness or what would happen there, but maybe the, on my way out mentality played a role too. This leads to, obviously, Lyndon Johnson being sworn in, so quickly so that it's literally happening on an airplane, right? He is the next president of the United States. Kennedy is gone. Kennedy is dead. As soon as Kennedy is presumed dead, he's dead, or as soon as he's in a vegetative state or whatever, even if Kennedy didn't, die, and he ended up in the hospital for like 4 weeks or something, which, if he was able to do that after the video that we saw, that would have been an amazing feat. But whatever happens, either way, Johnson knows that he's going to be taking over, right? And it's going to be quick. So regardless, even if they're still waiting or whatever, Johnson takes over. Very quickly, he is assuming the role as the 36th president. This means like confirming himself and then basically getting up to date on everything that Kennedy was, kind of doing and what he needed to be involved in. This is just more kind of images from like the funeral, loading up the casket into Air Force One. This is more images from the funeral again. Bobby Kennedy, some other Kennedy family members there, children, right? All dressed in black, kind of just a sad occasion. Obviously mourning the loss of their father and the president of the United States. Now, the nation mourns JFK's death, right? Lyndon Johnson is the next president. This Warren Commission is set up. With the Warren Commission, you have basically a commission that is set up by Lyndon Johnson to look into the assassination of President Kennedy. In doing this, the Warren Commission finds that Kennedy, in an 888-page report, was killed by Oswald. Just Oswald, nobody else. And then they also find that Jack Ruby acted alone in killing Oswald as well, which is important because JFK's death has got to be one of the most conspiracy-driven things of like all time, right? It's probably up there with like Area 51 or something, okay? There's a couple of different ideas. One of them, Louis Stephen Witt, carried a black umbrella with him to the Daily Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, and was caught in the famed Zapruder film, raising it into the air as Kennedy's car drove past. Some had claimed he was giving a signal, and others claimed that he could have shot a poison dart from the umbrella. I don't think a poison dart would do what we saw. Whatever conspiracy theories they want to throw around there. They talked to the guy, they interviewed the guy, they're like, hey, why were you waving that umbrella? And he was like, I heard it's a thing that, like, irritates Democrats. I just wanted to make Kennedy, like, mad. Like, it was like a symbol or something, or like a, whatever, like, basically like calling somebody a loser. I don't know. It's an old thing, okay? People loved umbrellas back then. Some claim it was a hit orchestrated by the mafia. In fact, some people believe that the mafia helped JFK steal the election in 1960 by securing votes in Illinois, which is really something that stems from this idea, the failed theory with the Bay of Pigs, right? So the connection there. Some believe that the government carried out the assassination themselves. Other insider assassination theories have included a story that William Greer, the driver of the president's car, turned around and shot JFK, a premise based on a very poor copy of the Zapruder film. And then my personal favorite, as championed by former President Donald Trump, Ted Cruz's father was somehow involved in the assassination of President Kennedy.
Wait, what?
A claim Trump loosely made during the 2016 election campaign. Trump said his father was, I can't do his accent or his voice or otherwise I would. Trump said his father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald being, shot, Trump said on Fox News during a phone interview. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right? Prior to his being shot, and nobody even brings it up. I mean, they don't even talk about that. That was reported, and nobody talks about it.
Nobody cares.
Well, there's the other thing, too. Did you guys ever see the memes about Ted Cruz being the Zodiac Killer? You guys never saw that? We'll have to take a look at it. It's kind of funny. It's obviously all a joke, but some of those pictures are pretty ridiculous. Okay, so Lyndon Johnson is swearing in. Now, the big thing that you see when presidents leave office, generally, is that their approval rating, it tends to go up, depending, right? We see this with even with different demographics. So, when George W. Bush was in office, his approval among Democrats was not very good. George W. Bush's approval right now, in this year, Democrats looking at it, they're like, oh, yeah, George Bush is, great, right? Yeah. There's things that change as you leave office. Now, especially if you are killed in office. The way that, obviously, the public is going to perceive JFK is a lot different. They see him as a war hero. When in reality, Kennedy actually took his crew to a territory where they were not really supposed to be in, and even though he saved lives, he also put people in that position. Kennedy's seen as a family man, but at the same time, Kennedy was having some of the most, easily recognizable affairs with, like, Marilyn Monroe. This is something that people always talk about. That's something that happened, right? And then also Judith Exner, young and healthy, but at the same time, Kennedy had a lot of back and stomach problems that actually eventually led to him being pretty dependent on things like painkillers. Now, this isn't to say that he's not a human being. Everybody has their flaws, but you can see that following office, Kennedy's perceptions are way up here when there's actually some stuff that probably, you should have and could have been pretty critical of. With the civil rights legacy, obviously Kennedy, he gets a lot of credit for some of that stuff, but really, again, as we talked, there's a lot of that was pushed through by Johnson and passed. Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act prohibited discrimination based on sex. Okay, so that's kind of a big deal. Next, we have the election in 1964. Democrat Lyndon B. Johnson is going to absolutely destroy the new opponent, Republican Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater is seen as very conservative. In fact, he's seen as like an extremist, even by his own party. He doesn't really have a lot of support from his party. And following the, remember, again, Lyndon Johnson, yes, he takes over. Yes, he is the 36th president, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have to go on and win an election the following year. So imagine figuring out all that campaigning process and taking over. But at the same time, given that the Conservative Party didn't put forward a really good candidate at all, it was probably always clear to many people that Lyndon Johnson was going to absolutely annihilate this election. He won 44 out of 50 states. Probably one of the biggest landslides in U.S. history. Johnson's Great Society, we got 2 slides left. Johnson's big thing is this war on poverty. Okay, he creates this Job Corps, which is created to give Americans skills to acquire jobs. The Job Corps is kind of like it's like your Hoosier Hills, like vocational kind of situation, right? Where you go there and you can work on different skills besides, things like mathematics, okay? VISTA is Volunteers in Service to America. This, on the other hand, it takes a lot of inspiration from the Peace Corps, but it's not sending people abroad. It's sending people to like inner cities, sending people to areas in the United States that need volunteer help. And then there's the Head Start program, which prepares underprivileged children for school. This is specifically geared towards impoverished children. It's and I think Head Start is still a thing that we see pretty often today, with making sure that we can set up an equal playing field, because a lot of impoverished children start kindergarten and they're already behind, and they have to play catch up throughout their entire education. So this is something that Johnson is kind of championing. This is his big thing. This is his blueprint, right? Billions for schools, AIDS, Medicare, war on poverty, right? This is his big goal. Johnson also wants to do a lot of stuff with health insurance. He wants to set up Medicare for those 65 and older. He wants to set up Medicaid for the poor and disabled, so some socialized health care. Education-wise, Johnson wants to fund secondary and elementary education with the Secondary and Elementary Education Act. He is funding schools in poor communities, in communities on reservations, in communities in inner cities, in Mexican-American schools, in giving learning centers, helping fund language laboratories and services, right? And then his final big thing is keeping America beautiful. Keep America beautiful, and that's his program, which is basically getting at cleaning up the United States, environment improvement, focusing on our environmental impact, probably looking at a lot of the national parks, and just making sure that we're not destroying the world or the United States in an environmental way. Anyways, that is what we have for today. That is the end of our notes for the day. I will tell you now, the next thing that I want you to do, if you do nothing else in this class, is go through and do day 3 while you're here, okay? Do day 3. It'll take you a short amount of time. Go through and do it, and then if you have enough spare time, you can go through and you can work on any missing work that you might have, okay? But those of you online, you guys are good to go unless you have a question for me. And if you don't, then I will see you on Friday.